Okay, hello, and today we are talking classic movies, we are talking a classic western, we are talking a classic American western that actually had its premiere in London rather than American. It actually had its premiere in London several months before it premiered in the USA. I'll tell you why later on. So welcome to the Tainted Tavern. Let's pour ourselves a drink and let's talk movies.
Welcome to the Tainted Tavern. Come sit inside for free.
Okay, now I'm drinking one of these weird IPAs that are turning up everywhere in the supermarkets over here. This one is called Rumi's Midnight Sun, 4.2%, is 333 milliliters. It's just going to be one of those standard AZ IPAs, isn't it? That's not the subject we are talking about today. Today we are talking about a movie, How the West Was Won. And I do want to talk a little bit about the physical media here side of it, because this is a Blu-ray. It's a wonderful transfer, and it's a 2-disc pack. So it's got two versions of the same movie. It's got the letterbox version, so a 16.9 letterbox version, but then it's also got a smile box version, which replicates the original Cinerama process. And I do want to go into that a little bit during this review. But the main focus of this review is going to be the movie, it's going to be the storytelling, it's going to be the acting, because I'm more about the actual movies themselves and the process of which they show. But it is important to discuss the technical aspects of How the West Was Won. Now, How the West Was Won was released in November 1962 in the UK. It has its premiere in London. But it wasn't released, I'm just checking from my notes here to make sure I get the dates right. But it wasn't released then until the following February, so the 20th of February 1962 in the United States. Now, the reason that this would have been unusual for a big budget American Western to get its premiere in the UK rather than its native homeland. And the reason for this was because it was shot. It is one of only 2 narrative films to be shot using the Cinerama process. Cinerama basically involved 3 cameras. And these cameras were big, cumbersome things. There's a wonderful documentary on the special features of this movie that looks at the Cinerama process and gives a full history of Cinerama. So that only adds extra value to this Blu-ray edition. From Warner Brothers, it's Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Cinerama presents How the West Was Won, and it's released on the Warner Brothers Blu-ray label. Excellent. Now, Cinerama, basically it was 3 cameras that shot simultaneously and provided a much wider screen than standard widescreen.
To achieve the stunning immersion of Cinerama, 3 synchronized projectors were required, casting a seamless image across a massive, curved screen.
But these cameras were big, they were cumbersome, they were apparently the size of refrigerators, so it made it really awkward. Another thing about this film was it set out to tell the story of how the West was won, and yes, it does tend to use the concept of manifest destiny as its driving force, but it's not in all fairness a gung-ho western, you know, where you've got stereotype red men and the good brave white men. It's not that at all. There are some elements of the film which looks from the Indians' point of view, and you can see the destruction that was brought on by white settlers in the area. But it basically tells the story of how America was born, if you like. How the West Was Won tells the story of how America was born. And it has been criticized for its seeming glorification of manifest destiny, the policy of manifest destiny, but I don't agree with that at all. I don't think it does that. Now, it's 3 main directors. It's a 3-hour movie, so it's quite a long movie. It had 3 main directors, so it's Henry Hathaway, George Marshall, and John Ford. Although John Ford's role in this movie is something... John Wayne stars in John Ford's section of the movie. No surprise there. But John Wayne's part, he plays General Sherman. Is basically a blink and you miss it cameo. You know, he's only on screen for minutes. And the director of that section, John Ford, he's almost a cameo director. The Civil War section of this movie is the smallest section of the whole film. I did make a note, Wayne's role is basically a cameo. He plays General Sherman alongside General Grant, played by Harry Morgan. And the Civil War section of the movie is unified with the rest of the movie because George Pepper takes part in it. George Pepper, of course, plays a major part in this movie. He's part of the Prescott family, whom this movie follows through several generations. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. We'll go back now and I'll take you through the story. But the Civil War section was rather disappointing. John Ford famously hated the Cinerama process. He wasn't happy with it at all. He felt it took too long to set up. It was too cumbersome. And it didn't allow for proper movements of the actors because, you know, it was so strict with the way the cameras had to be placed. So he wasn't happy about it. Plus he was in ill health at the time. So his section of the film is by far the shortest. The best section of the film, to my mind, is the first section dealing with the rivers. And the way the Western explorers, the pioneers, the settlers used the rivers to get from one part of the country to the next. That's directed by Henry Hathaway, as is the following section, the plains, which I think are the finest parts of the entire movie. The movie is presented on disc in the way it would have been shown in cinema, so you get this big overture, you get a big intermission, and you get an epilogue at the end, so you get all that. So it does try and faithfully replicate what it would have been like to see it in the cinema at the time. So there's 5 parts to the movie. You've got the rivers, you've got the plains, you've got the Civil War, you've got the railroad, and you've got the outlaws, which ends the movie. Now, the rivers, to my mind, the opening of this film is absolutely stunning, and you really get the visuals, particularly on a good transfer, and this current Blu-ray transfer. I believe there is a 4K version of this movie as well, but this Blu-ray transfer is absolutely breathtaking, especially when shown on a wide screen and presented in the Smilebox format. The Smilebox is a process where the image on the screen is bent and it tries to faithfully replicate what it would have been like to originally see this movie in Cinerama back in the day. Let's take a quick look at Smilebox. Okay, now what the Smilebox process does is curves the screen in order to replicate the Cinerama process, and it really does look wonderful. The bigger your screen, the better effect you will get from Smilebox, but it really does look wonderful. Normally when you're watching this film, and I've seen it so many times over the years on television, you'd see 3 visible lines on the screen running down the screen, where because of the 3 camera process that was used to film this, you'd see the joins in the screens, but this Smilebox really does replicate it. And here's James Stewart here. The clarity as well of the Blu-ray of the high definition transfer is exceptionally well done. Here comes James Stewart as Linus Rawlins riding into the Indian camp. This segment of the film here was directed by Henry Hathaway, and I think that out of all the sections of this film, this first section here, which introduces us to Linus Rawlins' character, then we come on to Carl Malden and the Prescott family, who are going to be a major part of the story, the driving force of the entire story. They take us right through from the very early days of Western expansion to post-Civil War and the reconstruction of America. It's an absolutely great film, and the Smilebox process, I really did enjoy watching this film in Smilebox. Sat back, I'm using a 65-inch television here, so it's not small, but it's not overly massive. But the clarity of this Blu-ray transfer is absolutely wonderful. I mean, the depth you've got here, And as I say, I don't know how well the camera's picking up this curve here, but the screen really does look exceptional. And for reasons of comparison, I'm going to change the disc now to put on the standard widescreen version of How the West Was Won, so we can see slight differences in the way that the film is being presented. Okay, now we're watching the film in the standard letterbox version, so we've got the completely flat screen here. Let me take this on a bit. So we're at this, there we are, we're at the exact same opening scene as we just saw now, and it still looks absolutely tremendous. The Blu-ray transfer it's a wonderful transfer. Still looks absolutely wonderful. And another thing I should mention, the sound on this is true Dolby 5.1. Brilliant sound as well, especially through a good sound system. You can really get immersed with this film. But as this is the letterbox version, if you look closely, you can see faint lines where the three cameras worked, because that's the way Cinerama worked. Three cameras shooting simultaneously, and then the scene is stitched together. And you can see that in the letterbox version. There's James Stewart again coming into camera shot. We'll get that lovely close-up of him now. Such a brilliant actor from the golden age of cinema. So that's the Smilebox version of How the West Was Won as compared to the standard letterbox version of How the West Was Won. But you get both versions on this, so you can take your choice. If you're using a small TV, I would say anything under 50-inch, I would generally watch the standard letterbox version, because the Smilebox can seem too squashed in on a small screen. But if you've got a screen 50 inches and up, as I say, I'm using a 65-inch here, it's wonderful experience to watch it in Smilebox and try and get that sense of wonder and sense of awe at the visuals that people would have originally got in the cinema back in the day. But okay, so at the beginning of the movie, after these amazing visual shots which shows the process of Cinerama to its full capabilities, looks stunning. It takes your breath away sitting there in the cinema, and you see these snow-capped mountain tops at the beginning. You're almost doing your coat up because you can feel the cold air coming off. And we're introduced to Linus Rawlins, played by James Stewart. And James Stewart is a mountain man. He's travelling along the river when he comes upon a family of settlers led by Carl Malden as the patriarch. Carl Malden's part in this movie is not big. He's only in it for 15-20 minutes, but it's an absolutely stunning part. And he's fantastic in it. He brings in a lot of humour. It's just a wonderful scene from Carl Malden. And of course there are so many big stars in this. We've got Emery Fonda, we've got Gregory Peck, we've got Debbie Reynolds, we've got James Stewart, we've got John Wayne, you know, and the list goes on and on and on. We've got Lee Van Cleef in a small role, we've got Ely Wallach, we've got Walter Brannan. It's just fantastic, fantastic cast. Now, James Stewart's character meets up with the settlers. He becomes, shall we say, friendly with one of Carl Malden's daughters. And he eventually marries that character, and it's that lineage from the Prescott family who becomes married to James Stewart's mountain man, the Rawlins, and it's that lineage which goes through the movie. So we see successive elements of this family as we move through the movie, because we're starting off in the very early days of westward expansion, and the final scenes of the movie, we're looking down at modern day 1960s America, you know, with the freeways and the cars rolling up and down the freeways. Debbie Reynolds, who plays one of the Prescott daughters, she plays that character through probably 50 years of movie. So we get a lot of makeup on her to age her, and she does a fantastic job for the entirety of the movie. Really unusual for them to use the same actress, basically starting off the movie as a teenager and moving up until a lady in her last days of her life, her dotage. It's really good. So that's it starts off. Then we're out on the plains and we're seeing the problems that the Indians are facing from white settlement. Then we're into the Civil War section, which, as I said, is something of it's a rather disappointing section, because although we've got some quality directors here who are known for their works in the Westerns, such as Henry Hathaway and George Marshall, John Ford will always be the granddaddy of the Western movie. You know, he's one of the. If John Wayne is the actor most associated with Western movies, then John Ford is the director most associated with Western movies. And as I say, his part is John Ford's section is rather slim, disappointing. I mean, and it's really weird as well, because given the capabilities of the Cinerama process to capture spectacle, it's amazing that they didn't actually show a major battle, something like Gettysburg, you know, to really be breathtaking for the audience. Another part of the Civil War section is James Stewart's character, Linus Rawlins, is killed in the Civil War, but his death happens off screen. We just hear the name. There's a body being put onto a wagon, and we just hear that name. So we told he died. It just really seems a strange thing to do. James Stewart apparently didn't actually film a death scene, but he did film himself dead, lying there dead. He actually was the body they put onto the wagon, but that was cut from the film. Film historians argue that the reason for this was because the studio felt that showing such a beloved actor as James Stewart lying there dead in the dirt and the mud would have been too upsetting for audiences. But it just seems jarring now. If you're not paying attention during that scene, when his name is mentioned for the briefest of moments, you wouldn't realise that it is James Stewart's character that has been found dead. James Stewart's son, George Peppard, who's grown up, is also at the same battle, but he doesn't know at the time that his father has been killed. So it just seems a strange and rather emotionless way to present the death of a character who's a major character throughout the whole film, because there was so much scope there. For George Peppard's character coming upon the body of his dead father, there was so much scope there for drama that they seem to ignore. But as I say, the Civil War section of this movie is, to my mind, the most disappointing section. After the Civil War, we've got the railroad section of the movie. Again, George Peppard taking lead part now. He's working as a security kind of thing, as a military security for the railroad, and Richard Widmark is excellent in here as the railroad man who doesn't give a damn. He just wants to get it done. And there's a lot of debate about the way that the railroads brought in buffalo hunters to wipe out the buffaloes in areas in order to starve the Indians, basically, to move them on. So that's questioned. So when you get the detractors who criticize this film for being pro-Manifest Destiny and not taking into effect the reality of what happened and how an entire race of people was displaced, I don't think that's a fair criticism. After that, we've got The Outlaws, in which George Peppard now is an aged character, and Debbie Reynolds again is in this now playing his auntie. His mother has died. We learned that she passed away. Again, her death is off screen. She passed away after hearing that her husband, Linus Rawlins, James Stewart's character, had died. She simply faded away. And so his auntie, played by Debbie Reynolds, is there now, and she's a very elderly character, and the family are moving away to San Francisco. But before they can go, George Peppard has got to do, in best Western tradition, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And he's got to face off against an outlaw, played wonderfully, evilly by Ely Wallach. Ely Wallach, brilliant. And I've never seen Ely Wallach take a bad role, but he's excellent in this. He's almost Tuco from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly before The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. So Peppard's got to face off against him, and then the family move off to San Francisco. And and happy life, happy ever after. How the West Was Won is a brilliant film. It was massively successful in its day. It was the biggest grossing film of 1963, and I mentioned that it premiered in London before it premiered in America a few months later, and the reason for that was the availability of cinemas able to show Cinerama, and London struck lucky, so the premiere of How the West Was Won actually took place in London before America, and that's very unusual for a big budget major studio western. But it was hugely successful. There was a TV series made many years later called How the West Was Won, which was basically based on this story, and that of course starred James Arness of Gunsmoke fame. That was a pretty decent series. But anyway, that's How the West Was Won. As I say, this Blu-ray edition I think is a great disc if you can get hold of this, because you get both the Smile Box and the standard letterbox version, but also the special features on here are excellent. You've got a commentary by filmmakers. You've got the major documentary on you, which is called the Cinerama Adventure, which is an excellent 50-minute documentary. I think there's theatrical trailers. So it's a really, really good quality package, and as I say, you get the standard letterbox and the Smilebox version. To my mind, Smilebox is worth watching, but only if you've got a large TV, a bigger than 50-inch. If you're watching on a standard TV, then you're better off sticking with the standard letterbox format, because the way the screen curves in Smilebox can make it seem shrunk down if the screen's not big enough. But it's fantastic in the standard letterbox version. So that's How the West Was Won. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment if you watch this film. Let's talk, let's engage. Also give this video a thumbs up and think about subscribing. For now, I'll drink my slightly dubious supermarket pale ale and say cheers, Solange, Yakida. Come back soon to the Tainted Tavern.
Come back soon.